go for main engine, start.
Group at the same time, and it sold out in like 30 hours. So that's cool. A Gainesville Classic KSR Performance, Kevin Smith. We didn't even have to use his YouTube mojo. If somebody is interested in the class or another class down there, we're looking at something in Texas too here in the next 2 months. Just send us an email, scott@realtuners.com, and let me know where you think you'd like to have a class at. If you think you can organize one, if you can get 15 or 20 people together, we'll do something. Come visit you. If the COVID rules don't absolutely kill us, or COVID itself, Lord, we're losing people left and right now. It seems kind of more realistic. Let's see what else is going on here. People are chatting. Hey, post the links on Facebook. I did. I created an event on Facebook. I have no idea where it went. I see people. Yeah, people see it. There's 8 people have liked it so far, and somebody commented on it. 2022. Yeah, I fucked up the date. I know. I fixed that though. Anyway, so that being said, did you guys? Okay, let's back it up. We were actively talking about this and kind of late getting started because we were talking about it. But the post today. Apparently, I have to go see the principal next week. I commented on the PRI page. They were showing their nice new building. And what did I say? I was like, hey, that's great. How's the RPM Act doing? You know, and then John Lund gets on there. And if you guys know John Lund, the famous Mustang Ford guy, factory ECU tuner, who's being currently in the middle of his EPA debacle, he commented on there. He's like, yeah, how many lawyers you got room for in there? And just kind of hammering the poor guy. And then Dr. Jamie Meyer got back on and said, all right, let me hear your concerns. Would you guys like a conference call? And we took him up on that opportunity. So I talked to his secretary, his administrative assistant, and we are scheduling something. Hopefully before this time next week, I'll be able to talk about what I talked with the president or CEO of PRI about as far as the EPA and what they're doing, and what advice can we come back with for the little guys or the medium guys or whoever, anybody in this industry. So Barnhill we were sitting here talking, and Brian's like, oh shit, they just took a bunch of my products down off my eBay store. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, so they've been doing some of it for a while. So it's eBay's new policy. A lot of communities selling points are going to do this. I don't know if it's going to go to other selling platforms, but basically they've said that here, actually, you know what? Where's my email? I'll read it word for word so I don't butcher it, because apparently people on YouTube get mad when I use the wrong names for things. We can talk about that later. There's some amusing things there. Yeah, so basically we had to remove your listing because it didn't follow our vehicle parts and accessories policy. eBay now prohibits the sale of all tuners, devices, or software that can modify vehicle performance, even if it does not remap the ECU or ECM or is described as diagnostics.
So hold on, pause right there. That is the sentence that gives them the ability to leave certain things up for some and take down things for others, whether they know or can confirm that it would would become tamperable, where you could tamper with a federally regulated emissions controlled device. Poof, mouthful. Holy balls. Brian's got to go tell the wife goodbye. Hello.
Okay, I'll check it.
Hey, dude. Yeah, it's kind of cute, man. Just kidding.
Yeah, so basically, and then this is in strict compliance with our policy prohibiting products that defeat, bypass, or shut down emissions control devices under our vehicle parts policy. So basically, a lot of those guys have made Amazon, eBay. I'm assuming it's going to come to any other platforms where you're listing things, and who knows if it gets pushed to shut places like Shopify or BigCommerce if they start to get leaned on to enforce this.
Do you use something like a Shopify for the Tuner Tools website?
I use Shopify, and I love Shopify. It works really well.
No, it's awesome. Your Shopify accounts, if that's Shopify, that's badass because it doesn't look like Shopify.
You
right?
can go in, right. You can use a Shopify template. If you know some basic coding, you can go and modify them pretty well.
Cool.
But yeah, so eBay and Amazon and some of those guys have pretty blanket policies because it's easier to say nothing's allowed rather than try to figure out what is and what isn't allowed. And some stuff makes sense, but now they got to the point they removed books. Like, do I have one over here?
Like they taking down the Banish books and stuff?
Yeah. So I saw books by a guy called Don Lasoda, specific tuning guides for GM.
Oh yeah, dude. So he's wrote like some Coyote stuff and things like that are pretty good, right? Yeah.
Yep. So they took that down, and then I just now, right before we started, they pulled down wire-in standalone ECUs. So not plug and play, not reflash, nothing like that. No emissions kept. Like literally, it's a box. So at what point is that? Hey,
so
we know
I can't put a standalone ECU on my go-kart, my off-road, my weed eater, but nothing.
Right. It's not you can't do it. It's that eBay says, well, we don't want to figure it out. And to be honest, I hate eBay. I hate selling on it. If it wasn't such a large marketplace that so many people go to first, I would.
I mean, is it worth it barely? Is it one of those things you barely make money at, or is it sinking?
It's getting close to that point. I had that debate today where I almost called them and told them that I had another issue with them and told them, screw you, shut off my account.
Yeah.
I still use it for some stuff, but like there's some things I have here that are not, they haven't gone off the motorcycle stuff I sell yet. But it's diagnostics, but at some point I'm sure they're going to start going after motorcycles. But it's not.
I wonder if they're going to go after all the cheap OBD2 readers that you can reset the codes with. I mean, technically that'd be the same thing, right?
I mean, I can reflash with this OBD Link SX. Any of the OBD Link products, they're really commonly used for tuning. So yeah, and that's not necessarily the EPA stepping in and saying you have to do this, but it's
what the fuck is it? Is my question. They're just doing what we want. We're just gonna go ahead and dude, I'm telling you what, their attitude is if it's internal combustion, we must fight it. It's the evil of internal combustion.
I mean, look, they got rid of anything that was handheld that was gas powered in California. Weed eaters, leaf blowers, all that shit now illegal to be sold in California. Generators.
Collapse the power grid.
So right. Kenny's like, fuck it, I don't mind. You probably can live off the grid. You have all the free honey you could possibly need, man. I can live off that shit. It's good.
Get some chickens,
Chickens, hell yes. That's good.
All right.
How many chickens do you have?
5.
And how many eggs do you get like per day?
Entirely too many.
For real?
4 to 5, but I mean,
wow, that's impressive. That is truly impressive.
You don't think
I'm doing my own home grow thing back here behind me. I've got like a lettuce, literally like a hydroponic lettuce farm going again. People know this from 3 or 4 years ago. I had one going on at my other house, but I have it going again, and it's producing way too much for us, for 2 people. We're giving away all kinds of fancy green leaf stuff. But so no, anyway, here's one thing. So I was talking to John Lund today, and I want to get him on. I had never we need to have him on anyway. Just as he's got a large business. He's been hit by the EPA. He stands to lose a lot. And he told me today he's on month 12 of not knowing when they're going to hear back from them, or when are they going to show back up on his door. He's kind of knows what process to expect because he's, talked to attorneys and all of that fun stuff. And so he knows they're going to come back and show up and say, here's your offer, sign this, or we'll go after you for criminal behavior or whatever. And so as an aside, we also know somebody who they just went ahead and didn't give that warning to. They just went after him for criminal behavior for owning a couple of semis that were deleted, DPF deleted. Interesting situation there. They come down on the diesel guys hard. But anyway, talking to John Lund, I said, hey man, what do you think could be done? Corey Willis fought for making it legal to recalibrate factory ECUs, and they're basically just not getting far or anywhere with that. Just, it's expensive. And he said he had talked to Corey Willis, and I know we have talked to Corey at length about it. He's fought it. They've spent a lot of money trying to push back and with no luck. And John's suggestion was, what about maybe the states can do something about it? Maybe we talk to some state legislators, because the states have already done things for the guys the dispensaries that sell the medical cannabis, marijuana, whatever you call it. And I checked into this in my state, actually right near me, there is a couple of these dispensary things, and they sell like the actual weed buds and the little pens or whatever, the little vape things that have the weed equivalent in them. I don't know much about it, so I was just asking a buddy of mine.
Sure you were. Sure you were.
Kenny's like, dude,
Your green stuff.
yeah, whatever. It smells really weird, like a skunk. Anyway, no, those guys, you're supposed to have a card in this state for it to be legal to use it, but you can buy it without having the card. It's technically federally illegal for them to do that, but the state was able somehow to block the feds from prosecuting or enforcing those federal laws in the state. And a number of states have done that. Most of the states that have dispensaries have made it impossible for the feds to come after those guys. So John Lund pointed this out to me, right? And I did some reading on it after I talked to him. And he's like, so what I was thinking is maybe we spend some money to get some time at the table with some state legislators here in Florida, where he's at. And that's a good state to do it in, it would seem, because they kind of like to push back on the federal government. And thought maybe there can be some kind of protection or a motorsports thing. Another idea that came up with the guys here, and I'm curious what you end user listeners think, YouTube commenters, whatever. Another thing that came up, Tom Sewell here brought up that, hey, maybe we have some organization that the racers all join that go together, much like a factory would or an OEM, and say, hey, look, we're going to pay the taxes for the carbon credits that our total output of this group, and come up with some kind of metric. Because let's be honest, I mean, let's say there were 100,000 race cars that were signed up in this that wanted to use factory ECUs or standalones or anything, whatever, that just wanted to exist and race. That shouldn't be a very large carbon footprint, because they don't run 24 hours a day or 8 hours a day. These are engines that run like, I mean, I hate to say it, engine builders, but if you actually put an hour meter on the typical drag engine, if it's making any power, if that fucker can stay together for 10 hours, it's amazing, right? Or 5 hours. I mean, so you're not really talking a large carbon footprint, even for the number of vehicles. Can we all?
My thought was kind of like a tax that you pay with your registration. Hey, I'm going to mod my car. I know I'm going to do this. I'm going to pay an extra $100 a year for my registration, and that,
or your membership to PRI, maybe, or if it's that group that does that, I'm going to bring that up to Dr. Jamie Meyer. But Tom, that's a brilliant idea. I just wanted to throw that out there because,
I honestly think some kind of tax that you pay when you register your car that says, hey, I pay extra every year to be an emissions exempt vehicle. You know what I mean? And you get a little sticker.
My off-road vehicle, which I certify only runs X number of hours, and let's put an hour meter on every car if they want to be dicks about it. Something like that. You know what I mean? I mean, we could sample that, but I mean, the motorsports stuff.
I think everybody here, even if it was $200 a year and you had a car that you modify, you said,
we'd all pay that. We would all pay that. Yeah. Exactly. And I'd like to see that all go to a fund for cleanup or something like that, I mean,
if we're going to go that far, like they've talked about in every document, they put that whole reasonable basis and all of that about testing. If I can take my modified car to the dyno,
no shit. What if as a group we could do that?
Yeah, hell,
there's your SEMA garage. There's where that SEMA garage thing would become useful.
But I mean, they're looking at that as doing EO numbers for big manufacturers. That doesn't make sense for me. It doesn't.
No, it doesn't. It's not. It doesn't matter. An EO means shit. I there are people who have got EOs for tunes now that have been fined by CARB in California.
They specifically have had two lines. That one is you can get an EO number and we won't prosecute. The other is you can have proof that you pass OEM or better emissions standards. They don't say what test, and that's the problem I've had with it. But I have a dyno with a CAN bus 5-gas analyzer. Why can't I prove that my car passes current emissions?
I had this conversation with Paul at DynoCom over PRI. The specifications for the
one
dyno,
smart mother ever.
Yeah,
Paul is a
very
smart dude.
He looked into this and he wanted to do this. So like the dyno rollout, like it has to be a 48-inch roller, and there has to be less than 10,000 variants in the roller, which is like almost damn near impossible to do. Yeah, there is
So it
actually
has to be done on
specifications
emissions
on the
quality dyno.
Yeah, it has to be on an emissions quality dyno, and like I said, the rollers have to be, you know, a specific size within 10,000ths of an inch, which is like, it's like, I can't remember the exact specs. He knew them, but he said, you know, the DynoJet roller is within 40,000ths. This one's within 60. He goes,
you know what that
really
is because they machine their rollers. They're the only guys that aren't doing fabricated rollers.
Exactly. And he said the machine a 40-inch drum or a 48-inch drum within X size is very, very tough to do. It's extremely expensive. You know what I mean? So
no, I've watched it. If you go to, we had 2 classes. We've done 3 classes there, or 3 classes, I think, at DynoCom. And we'll go down and watch the CNC machines cutting out and then putting the knurl on at the same time out of billet on the rollers. That's really, they don't market that hard enough. But I started paying attention to that. Look at the Mustang or DynoJet rollers that you might typically see, and just spin them by hand and hold your finger there and watch them go like 1/8 of an inch out around or more per spin. And then like the DynoCom one, he's like, they try to have it like within 60,000 or something ridiculous like that.
Which is really funny because they don't manufacture tires that are that
accurate. Yeah.
So it's like such a stupid requirement. It doesn't make any sense because the tires aren't with that. You're lucky if tires are within 1/4 of an inch, let alone, you know, 10,000ths of an inch.
Now I've gone down the rabbit hole, and I actually have the EPA spec number for an emissions chassis tire. Yeah. What's one of these things cost?
I think the cheapest one's right around 200 grand. You know,
all right, let's start buying one. Station them throughout 4 or 5 places in the US. But what about so this is for certification, so this doesn't even count emissions testing dynos that they used back when we used to sniff all the cars.
They're out there, right? I mean, you probably need a 5-gas or a 4-gas or a multi-gas analyzer or whatever they're using nowadays.
Well,
so the Plex one meets all the emissions testing standards.
Well, Paul said they they calculated everything you'd need, like to make a dyno that was within spec and come with the 4-gas that meets specifications and everything like that. And they said it would be a minimum of $200,000 for them to sell that. You know what I mean? How many guys are going to spend $200,000 just for the dyno and the testing equipment? You know what I mean? That's a lot of dough. How many places out there have that kind of, or would spend that kind of money? Maybe a handful.
Well, it doesn't guarantee you anything either. It just means that you can
exactly
do the test. I mean, that's all they're saying with that. I mean, and plus that's also only going to work for your, you know, on-road type people. I mean,
yeah, but the tests are really specific. So they actually take a gas sample when you do a test like that, and you store the gas sample for X amount of days. You know what I mean? Like when Paul was telling me about it, I just pictured some dude standing behind the dyno with like a Ziploc baggie, hurry up and filling the thing up. You know what I mean?
Graham Bean is on here. The bastard, you won't come on the show because he doesn't want to get in trouble or anything. But he's super cool guy. He's ex-Lotus and Lingenfelter engineer and a good buddy of ours. He's funny. He's listening. He's already hassling me. What deterioration factor? He knows all the OEM emission stuff. It's hard shit to get to work right. You can build a hot rod. Anybody can build a 500 horse engine, but make that sucker keep its emissions happy at 60,000 miles and not have to replace spark plugs or wires or anything for 60,000 miles.
When you start doing, I gotta go back and try to remember what it was. I remember we had to change something. Comes across my desk on it was something 3rd or 4th tier. I can't remember his cooling system, or it might even been something accessory drive, like an alternator setting or some bullshit. They wound up having to change because of emissions standard during some running. Like we had to change something to meet emission standards. It was like we probably spent $40,000 in engineering money to redo this and to redo all our documentation and drawings for what was essentially a point where hell, half the tuners probably skip and don't even think about doing if they're not doing steady state or a lot of drivability stuff.
well, too, I mean, the other thing you got to test on a lot of that stuff. I was talking to one of the engineers at APR, before Christmas at a party, and he was sitting there talking about all the stuff going through. Anything you change that's not like for instance, you flex fuel convert a car that wasn't originally flex fuel. Getting that certified is next to impossible because you also have to certify the lifespan of the components you're using. You can't just grab the OEM stuff and say, hey, this will work. You have to certify it and test it and say that, this component's good for 80,000 mile, whatever bullshit,
Yeah, it's what like CARB approved cats and all that stuff, and EPA approved cats have to prove that they're going to last as long or longer, because that's part of the statement and all the EPA documents as well.
Yeah, you got to look at what they're rated for too. That was another thing he was saying. He's saying like a lot of the guys that have like GT3, weekend cruisers, and so they may be 2 or 3 months old. He said, I can guarantee you they're not going to pass an emissions test anymore because all they do is take them out on the weekend of the road course and blast full throttle. And said, pretty much all the lining's gone out of your cat at that point because they're only rated to like whatever 1% of the service life at wide open throttle, and the rest of the time they're assuming you're not driving on a racetrack.
That was actually Corey at PPI. One of his argument was that the trucks that he's tuning run better and are cleaner than a stock truck that's got 250 or 300,000 miles.
And that was something with the diesels that he was actually able to pull off and validate too, right? It seemed like he had pretty good evidence backing that up. At least I thought so. He seemed to have his shit together.
I mean, let's be honest. At this point in time, I think everybody knows it's beyond what's actually coming out of the tailpipe. It's more than that.
I mean, so dude, I need to get that video and go find it again where the EPA lady says, this is a war on internal combustion, people. We're using whatever means through the law we can to eliminate as much internal combustion as we possibly can because it, burns hydrocarbons or whatever.
It was actually Corey that posted that they had a meeting with it.
Right. Corey Willis.
EPA,
yes.
Yeah. That was what Corey posted that the lady in the EPA was like, we want to get rid of your, internal combustion engine. And the lawyer was like hitting her, like, shut the fuck up. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I mean, if they do, they do. Let them state their case. I'm okay with that. Let's get it all out on the table. If there's the less.
We'll build fast EVs.
Good.
Well, that's 3 to 5 mil for a test cell. Yeah, boy.
Yeah, we
so that's Andrew Corder. He's talking about AVL equipment there, which he's right. But I'm guessing, Andrew, we need to get you on here, man. I might send you an invite, but I'm guessing Andrew's probably working at an OEM or manufacturer's or one of the sites that the OEMs lease out to do testing before they go through a certification so that you make certification cheaper. Maybe. Let me ask, like I was telling Andrew, I've done some what I call second tier, where I've been a part of projects either as an employee or as a contractor, where I took a small portion of the project was my responsibility. There's usually 4 or 5 pretty serious contractors and consultants involved. When you're say you make a forklift, you sell a forklift and you want to make it emissions certified so you can sell it in this country, or a boat. I think I've talked about that one before. I helped develop the knock detection system for a popular family of boats, which have been out on the water for a couple of years. But anyway, so I don't know if he's listening. GM Proving Grounds. Yeah, he doesn't do emissions-based testing in his building, but he works for I got that vibe. I didn't know he worked for them, but a lot of the OEMs, it saves them money not to go try and test over and over and over at a facility off their property. They just go ahead and purchase their own or build their own test cell, make sure they're compliant, and then going through the tests for the federal stuff is a breeze. And honestly, Andrew, does it at GM, are you guys allowed to do your own certs, or do you have to go to these other certified facilities? I mean, you can technically, I know from reading the CFRs, which are the rules, the Code of Federal Regulations, they explain pretty clearly, you could technically build your own facility and do all the testing and document it and make sure it meets their requirements for certification, i.e. you could self-certify, but a lot of people don't do that because it takes expertise that only OEMs can afford.
I don't remember. I thought you still had, at least, it's been a while since I've looked at it, you still needed to have third-party verification.
Yeah. He says he sees the stuff we see 3-4 years ago. He saw it. Now I bet it's more like 6 or 7 for the world I'm working in.
Depends on the manufacturer. Honda, 6 or 7. It takes them forever to get anything to market because the amount of testing we did
Yeah.
in-house.
No, I'm saying I'm that
Or
far
anything else.
behind a first tier OEM. Yeah, you guys, your Honda stuff, you guys, I'd say 6 or 7 years ahead of the stuff that I would see. Yeah, I'm not gonna name the marine company, a very large inboard engine manufacturer. Why do we need to have Chad Reynolds in this conversation? I don't know. I guess we'll have to ask Daniel what he thinks. Why would just Chad a emissions guy? I worked with Chad for a couple years at Spectre. Know him well. We'll talk to him. We'll ask him.
I mean, does the government have like you go get certified as an emission inspector class or something? You know what I mean? Like they have that for everyone else.
So Andrew Quarter, the way the certification process worked for all the things I ever did was you could actually certify it yourself, but I mean they start off with the rules really simple. You have like for oxygen sensor, they define you have to test in span gases and use certified span gases, and someone's got to sign their name. There's certain formatted documents that you submit that shows that you did the testing. You could lie about it, but if you did, you get in trouble because what they do is they'll come in and they do the testing. Farther down the line, they'll do fleet testing, and they may or may not do. Sometimes they'll have you submit a document that says you did it, but more often than not, that's the way it works. They don't actually come around and manually, purposely test everyone or everything. You submit that you did the testing, and the easiest way to do that for if you're not a gigantic OEM is you can pay companies like Southwest Research Institute. I think they're in Arizona. We have some listeners that work there, and they would help you through that process. There's a facility in both Houston, Texas, and Detroit, Michigan. But I know the one in Texas is the one we've used, and it's backed up like 3 years. So that's the other thing that sucks. If you've got a family of engines, of boat engines that are about ready to go through their proving, and you're paying third parties to do it, you better make sure you're on the schedule at these facilities to do this stuff.
I mean, if you're 3 years backed up, more than likely the standards are going to change by the time you actually get the test.
Oh, interesting. I'm reading this stuff with going back and forth between Andrew and those guys. And Brad's messaging me. Sorry. Carry on. Yeah, so anyway, okay, anybody else got any bright ideas I can drop to how PRI and SEMA can feel like they're doing something for us and us feel like that the effort is going somewhere good? Because I got the feeling you're a little frustrated.
After we put an internal combustion engine in them. Because apparently that's really freaking difficult. As I recently learned.
There he goes. Andrew talked about that now. So they'll still take it out of house for EPA cert, but they'll make sure they'll proof it all in house.
Yeah, that's if I recall how we did things. I know we did all our in-house testing at Honda because then I would get yelled at when we had to change something. But I thought we were still sending everything out for verification because most government certs they don't let you do anything in house because I mean we cheat. I mean, of course we would. Volkswagen still did it when they sent it out of house. So
sorry.
But even so when I worked at Sylvania in non-automotive world, any kind of UL testing or anything like that, we did our testing in house, but it all still had to go out and be verified by UL or whatever. There was a bunch of testing houses that would do UL and CE certification, and we tested in house to make sure we didn't waste the money sending something out that was going to fail.
Sean Kruger, there you go. So Toyota LPG trucks have been no more at Toyota LPG trucks because EPA's busted them. Wow. I mean, see, dude, they're coming at internal combustion from every angle. If it's spark ignited, liquid, or even gaseous fueled, they are not tolerant of it, which sucks. Huh. Okay. Any other crappy topics anyone wants to talk about? Before I say fuck it and just say it's over, go to bed. Oh my gosh, people are emailing me like crazy.
So what would be a fun, here we go, I got one for you. This would be right up James's alley, actually. Totally off topic from what we've been talking about. Let's get back to something fun like LS swaps. What's a nice streetable, fun camshaft to put in your shipbox 5.3 swapped, say, C4 Corvette? I know that sounds oddly specific.
Is it a NA,
Who's
turbo
doing
car?
NA?
A lot of variables.
We're gonna say NA for now. It may get turbocharged much later, but you know, hey, any cam could be a turbo cam.
That's kind of a loaded question because it really depends on what the intended use of the vehicle is going to be. I mean, if they want to idle the thing, if it's a manual or something, and they want to idle it in first gear through a parking lot, you're probably not going to put like a BTR stage 4 or something in it, you know?
Yeah, nothing big like that. Yeah, more of a kind of a fun street cruiser. It is a manual transmission car, so figure Grandpa may want to, you know, show off the New Balances or something.
Right. Yeah. That car's pretty light too. So, I mean, you could get by with something that's bigger and, you know, be able to, you know, keep drivability somewhat nice. There's all kinds of different cams you can use though. So, you know, they all make within 5 or 10 horsepower one another. So
What would James use?
I'm curious too, because I know what my go-to on these cars is, but
The short of silence.
yeah, I mean, it's really my go-to on
I didn't hear you.
any kind of thing for me is something in the like the Texas Speed 228 or the Stage 2 NA cam. Although on a 5.3, I've usually done that on the 6.0s. I'm not sure on a 5.3 actually. I'm not sure if I've done a street 5.3 in a long time.
Honestly, we use a lot of the BTR LS3 cams in those things. They seem to work really, really well. You know, it also depends on what valve spring package you want to run because, you know, that's going to dictate the lift on the cam. You know, we sell a whole bunch of truck cams and stuff that are real nice and make decent power, but they are kind of lackluster on power just due to the fact that they could get by with either stock beehive springs or a 550 lift like LS6 spring type deal. And, you know, the lobes are softer, you know, to account for the less seat pressure and open pressures. But I mean, generally speaking, for making the best power and keeping some drivability, I would literally put like a stage 3 LS3 cam.
Is that what Nick Deal's talking about? Do you see that? Use it in NA builds that may go turbo?
Yeah, the BTR Stage 3 turbo cam.
Yeah, the turbo cams work also. They generally have, you know, less overlap. So they drive really nice, naturally aspirated. And, you know, the other valve events are still in a place to where they'll make decent power up top. So, yeah, that's definitely a good option also.
Kids are having fun in the background. I don't know that mine are asleep, but they're mostly in bed, maybe.
Somebody's yelling in the background.
Yeah.
What else? That was a good question. That got us off the depressing talk for a while.
Yeah, speaking
One
of,
thing I want to mention is if you're building your car for next spring or summer, get your parts ordered now. Don't
Dude.
expect to order them in March when you get your tax return and then be in
Let's talk
stock.
about that. Nope.
Yeah, I
Order
mean,
them
we're-
now and get them done now.
So I know everybody's seeing how we had our biggest year and it was our best year and things are great. Things are going great. I think that's some bullshit because dude, Dart has it been a year since Dart has been able to deliver a block?
Yeah,
Has it been that? It's been a season. And,
It's
and I'll
amazing.
tell you what, my remote tuning business was down. So it's hard to tell. I was going over this with Brad the other day, but the overall number looked like 20%, but I took 60 work days away from work that I didn't do any remote tuning, that I worked on the fucking Turbinator Bonneville car, which I love. So that dug into a whole bunch of my remote tuning days, right? So we were doing the math and trying to figure out, we think maybe it's more like 10% down, but it's down even farther at the start of the year. This first 12 days, it's usually hopping busy, and now it's like medium busy. And what's being taken away is the race cars. A lot of people had to put their programs on pause because they don't have fucking parts to put the Pro Mod back together for the year.
I called Dart today for a set of head studs for one of their aluminum blocks, and the guy I know, he goes, and I was like, "What's that mean?" He's like, "I would figure a few months best case." I was like, "Do you have a date?" And he's like, "A few months at best case." Like, I don't think they have a clue.
That's
Is
your
the
warm
answer.
up figure.
Yeah,
That's your
like,
warm up number.
we
talk
just
to
spent
somebody-
2 months finding rods for our drift cars for the season.
I
Yeah,
talked to
that's
somebody.
that's the problem. There's like, some little nitpicky part that keeps the whole build from being assembled. Head studs for a dart block are specific to that particular block.
I mean, James, can you talk about what you guys are planning with all that square footage you're adding on at BTR yet? I mean, are you allowed to talk about?
Yeah,
You guys are working on making that less of a problem, right?
They're probably
Yeah, so we're
styling.
trying to bring manufacturing and stuff in house, obviously, and a lot of it is actually order fulfillment. So there's 2 buildings being added on, and I'm probably going to misquote the square footage on this because there's going to be mezzanines and stuff in a couple of them that obviously increase the floor plan square footage. But the big building is basically 20,000 on the actual concrete floor, and then there's another 10,000 or 12,000 next to it, and we're basically just expanding. We're out of room. I'm not even in the actual building in product development. We're across the street in the old BTR building, and that's where all the engine dyno, the Spintron, and all of our test engines and all that stuff is all staged, and tools and all that whatnot, our offices. And but some of that stuff might actually eventually move over into the existing building now. But yeah, for the most part, it's expansion. We're getting ready to start developing a lot of Hemi stuff. We've got a couple engines slated to go on the dyno here in the near future, do some cam testing and whatnot on that. And it's been a real eye opener the last 8-9 months. Well, heck, I guess it's almost been a year now. In March, I will have been there for a year. So yeah, it's pretty bizarre what all goes on in the background of the automotive industry. I'll just leave it at that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's a weird business. What little I know about it.
I talked to somebody I know today at Summit, and there's a particular tire a lot of racers use. They said they're over 100 sets back ordered right now, and they said they've never seen a back order that high.
I wonder what's going on at Tire Rack. Those guys would know. I'm just curious to see what Tire Rack has going on for delays and things.
Tires in general, it was actually probably the biggest stressful point.
Well, you're a drifter, man. That's the 80% of your annual budget is bullshit tires.
Every single manufacturer was scrambling to even get enough tires to maybe get their drivers through an event. And there's still other budget issue stuff like that. Even manufacturers that are 100% dedicated to FD, they just couldn't get between materials, between shipping, just everything being shut down. They are so far behind. But it doesn't, not just that racing, it's pick your tire right now. Tires is one that were hit so hard because where so many of them are made and in shipping. And one thing that I saw posted this week, and I confirmed it with the stuff for Janetta, and some of the other stuff, is a year ago, $5,000 to ship a 40-foot container from Taiwan to the US, which Taiwan is where a lot of tires are made, wheels, stuff like that as well. This week, $29,000 to ship that same container. Stuff that we were shipping from the UK, shipping our Janettas over, that a year ago was, I think they said they were paying $2,900 to $3,900, is $18,000 to $20,000 now. So that alone. Then on top of that, we've got delays in customs, parts coming in, materials coming in, costs and all that stuff going up. It doesn't matter. A lot of times I think it was like a small pin or like a single small component that was holding up major production, and that's not going to change anytime soon. And I believe that a lot of companies had a really, really good year last year. We did too, until we just ran out of things to sell in some cases. Same thing. We've got projects sitting around, like a ton of them that are 3/4 done, and we just cannot get the parts to finish a good chunk of them.
Yeah, it's been that way across several
And
industries.
that's price point. That stuff's the shipping. It's not going to go down anytime soon. I think that's what you see. Some guys, the guys that are adapting, like the JB, sounds like that's what BTR is doing, is bringing more stuff under their control as much as they can. There's always materials and stuff like that. But as long as you can minimize what the bottleneck is.
I'm personally hoping that it brings some more manufacturing back. I've talked to a couple companies that are like, hey, we were getting these from China and, they're $300 a piece, but we can make them for $400 a piece here. We're working on just making them here so we don't have the issue anymore. So I think we're going to see a lot of that. You know what I mean? So I hope. But a lot of that stuff takes a lot of time to come online. You can't just open a factory. You know what I mean?
And there's still material we don't have just to bring the ability to even make some raw materials back to the US. So we're still stuck with some bottlenecks. Well,
the other thing that a lot of people don't realize too is, just because you're already having a part made overseas or something already doesn't mean, it's just going to miraculously start running perfect on a machine here. I mean, you've got to proof study, tool lines and, CNC equipment programs. And I mean, just research and development.
Funny you say that. I just got a 3D printer. I got like the basic Ender 3 V2, right? And it the world's most common 3D printer, and tuning that fucker has been a blast because there's a lot you got to do to make it print nice, to make it print perfect stuff. I thought that was kind of interesting. I'm sure everybody else has a 3D printer already, but you talk about CNC
I've got that
stuff.
Same exact one.
Yeah, you talk about CNC stuff. It's a great training ground before you start hacking through billet and fucking up tools and stuff like that.
It's one thing too to write some G code and make one part. It's a whole nother to be able to make a production line and be able to.
Yeah, you got to consider manufacturing and everything you're doing. Every time I hear a mechanic complain about an engineer who put an oil filter somewhere where a screw got in the way, but then I've also worked with engineers where literally of all the shit on their list, they got to make that thing, got to make it manufacturable, got to make it as cheap as it can be to ship it from overseas. It's got to, there's so many concerns that they're going to miss a couple little things with your oil filter, and you're going to bitch like you're that much smarter than them.
And then the bean counter's like, hey, but
the bean counters are the root of all evil.
Instead of $305.
Yes.
And that saves us $1 million. And it half the time, I've
done. Bean counters are the root of all evil everywhere, save for the lawyers.
A lot of times too, it's like I've literally stared at like a drain on a radiator or something like that, and be like, "Well, that's a really shitty spot for it," but I can't modify that part because that is the same as this other chassis that was designed 3 years ago. And in order to save $1 billion or whatever, we're reusing this cooler. And while I can't just go blasting a hole in something, or same thing. That's what tends to happen with the oil filter stuff. You don't design an engine for a car. You design a family, and then well crap, this oil filter's there, and it costs us $4 million to relocate it, or you got to use a funnel to drain the oil.
Same sort of stuff you run into in the software world with pipelines and stuff like that. It'll work great for 40%, and then somebody bitches about the one environment where it doesn't work. And you're like,
yeah,
I'm gonna rewrite the whole thing because you're being
start from scratch to accommodate one squeaky wheel.
Yep.
I had to tell somebody that my class probably wouldn't be for them. The other day, I felt kind of bad, but I had to fire a potential customer. This guy was hassling me. Well, I don't want to go for the first day. I'm not a beginner. I'm an advanced user. I'm like, well, you probably don't need a class then. It's like, I want to know the details of the Holly system. I'm like, then go to Tom Kai's class at Holly. He'll teach you every fucking nook and cranny of that software. It takes like 5 or 7 days or something, and they call it the gauntlet, but it's good. I mean, I've had a number of students that went to his class and then came to ours or vice versa, and said they complement each other well.
Is he being realistic in the expectation of his skill, or the assessment of his skills?
Well, he had an engine dyno, and he had he didn't have 802s, but he had EGTs, and he was. I had a decent chat with him about here's what I know a little bit. Get O2s and EGTs, get a combustion pressure analyzer, at least one channel of that. talk to them. I said, I can talk a little bit about that, but we're still going to take people from zero. I don't give a shit how advanced, and we'll cover some really advanced topics. If I can answer the questions, or if I can go find an answer and get the right expert on the phone, we'll cover some advanced shit in the class. But we are still going to start from zero every time, all time. Because here's the deal: if you're going to tune your shit, or you're going to be a tuner, it's like playing a musical instrument. Your skills, you need to repetitively work these skills, right? And you need to be, if you want to be the tuner that doesn't have to rely on your wife's real estate business or your mom and dad's money, if your mom's not going to keep your Corvette bolt-on shop going for 20 more years, I'm getting all kinds of people pissed off tonight, right? But anyway, if you have to be in business, I had this discussion with Delgado. Why isn't Scott Clark huge on Motec, right? It's fucking expensive, and it takes people a long time. And a lot of these race cars, we wanted $18,000 worth of Tefsel wire, and fuck anybody that says the word mil spec, we'll get on that separate, but if you're going to spend all this time and all this money on the race car, dude, the guy they're going to come to and the guy that's going to stay in business, it doesn't matter if he's running a garbage collection business or tuning. It's the guy that can meet the expectations of the job at the lowest cost possible, as quickly in as little time as possible.
Hey, that's literally what mil spec means. The cheapest possible.
Exactly. No, I mean, I get it, but it also, it's not a specification that's any kind of presumed standard. All it does is it met the requirements of that contract or that proposal.
I mean,
Yep.
I'm
If you've ever done GAC stuff, IT, I bet Kenny has. I know I have.
Or Tevzel.
Yeah.
There's a
It's
time for it, but the whole everything has
They
to be
put out an
Tevzel-centric
RFP and then you
twisted.
write a bid for it and you got to meet the rules, and then people will argue forever over whether or not the gray areas, how they worked.
Because they can't write a fucking RFP worth of shit.
No, there's a lot of them that can't, and that's where people get screwed. Never, and you can smell one of the RFP writing noobs a mile out, but that's funny. We'll have to
kind
joke
of
about
funny.
that later.
You mentioned the guy that says, I'm not a beginner. I'm really intrigued by the amount of people I talk to that are like, oh, I've been tuning for this long. And they really are a beginner, and they just don't realize that they're a fucking beginner.
The
You know
ones,
what I mean?
what's cool about the classes is you guys all know, James knows this. James, I had like 20 people asking about doing one at your place. We got to talk offline because I know you guys are busy, and I'm not saying we're going to have or anything, but I'm just telling you that we had a lot of people asking. You and Blake both, I had about 20 to 25 people each in their area. When are you going to next one? Are you going to do at James's? I'm like, I don't know. We'll ask. But we could,
Yeah, we'll talk offline on that.
Yeah, we got to figure it out. But if not, we'll do one in your area. If you're not, if you're tied up. James has a real job as an engineer now, so it's kind of hard. It's gonna be harder for him. But yeah. Anyway, so this guy was telling me, and I'm just, man, I don't think it's for you. Well, he told me, he's like, I went to Ben Strader's class and it was a fucking waste of money and blah blah blah. I'm like, well, that's not my fault. That's not my fault. I said, the only reason I'm doing this because of experience. I have a certain experience that the target audience typically likes. But what's cool is, James will tell you this, you people that come to our class are already past the ego problems. If they'll admit that they might learn something from paying us what a typical dyno tune costs, under $600 or whatever for a weekend, and get 2 good lunches, then they're already over their ego. And generally everybody that shows up at class is super cool. And I just got the feeling this guy was going to be a buzzkill. So I
mean, really, the classes are a good time. You get to go hang out with other car guys.
Oh, yeah, they are.
And if you only learn a couple things from it, you really got your money's worth.
Yeah, but like to check it out though. A lot of these classes, like the people that show up, you'll learn as much from the other people that showed up. Like I've had classes where there were 2 NHRA pro stock teams, and those guys are super cool in a non-public environment about sharing things they know about max effort engine tricks and things like that and stuff they've seen. That's interesting shit. Hearing Tom Vigu talk about the stuff he's done. He came to one of our Street Outlaw area classes, one of the little ones we did. He just showed up down in one of the New Orleans classes at Scott Travis' shop. It was one of their private things they did, and you could listen to him for hours. I've had Joe from Pro Torque came in here. Dusty Bradford kept everybody going for a couple hours, like asking torque converter questions. He actually brought in torque converters in different stages of assembly or adjustment, weld together stuff. It was pretty cool. But yeah, so you'll learn a lot. I think we're gonna try a Dallas Fort Worth thing, and then I'm told I got to do something up in the Northeast when it warms up. So we might work with Brian on that.
Don't come here right now. It's miserable. Today's better.
Don't come up here right now.
I went
It was
to our
55
back
here
unheated
today.
area, It was five yesterday.
Fucking 5.
And then there's
It doesn't matter if it's
yeah.
Fahrenheit or Celsius. Isn't that
And
about
then
the
there's
same
people
at
like
that point?
like Dahlquist that
Oh,
live in like
God damn it.
fucking
Yeah,
negatives.
true, right.
But
5
like I literally
Celsius is way
I
warmer.
walked to
Sorry.
the back of the building, put a jump pack on a car, started it, drove it out, and my hands were like painful. I had to go sit in the office. It just like I'm like miserable. And then yeah, it was what 25 today, and I was on the dyno. So
There's a
yeah,
one-word answer
wait.
for that. Luggage.
Ugh.
Samsonite. Something. That's what Keith Turk always says. Samsonite.
But I guess back on the class thing. One thing I've always said, I don't care. You could be the most experienced tuner in the world. Sometimes talking to someone that isn't experienced, especially someone that learned a different way, like they'll do things or look at things a certain way. Like there's still tuners I work with that are new. I'm like, oh man, I never thought of doing it that way. I'm like, I don't know. I'm an idiot. I didn't learn. I was like, no, that makes
Oh, I
sense.
pick
You
up
just learn a
stuff from
different
people
way.
who come to the class same way. There's guys that do factory computers, dyno tricks. I mean, shit, we've had classes at DynoCom, the facility, where the guys there can like literally answer like the math behind how fucking hard it is to make a dyno read a number, and the fact that there's no standard for chassis dynos. So what the fuck? What do you reference it to? That's the think about making a dyno. That's why I kind of go easy on Allison and them, because you know, if I see little inconsistencies or Delgado's dyno making 4,900 horsepower on somebody's 400-inch LS with a pair of 98s or whatever.
That's what we've always said, right? But there's actually I need to find the article. There's a really good article talking about DynoJet, which is ironic.
I've read that one.
Oh, DynoJet's the standard. That it literally has
A
fudge
Yamaha
factor.
motorcycle.
Yeah, has a fudge
Yeah.
factor built into it because they were dynoing. It was the highest horsepower motorcycle at the time, and their dyno kept reading lower than everybody else's. So they put a correction factor in the
Yeah,
dyno.
they
And
turned
they
it
never
up.
knew
Yeah.
why. Like
Yeah,
it
it's
didn't, the
because
math said it
Yamaha's
didn't
shit
need
was
it.
making a little more power than advertised at the time.
Right.
That was the thing that happened with those bikes.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so when people start talking, because that's always the fun thing I get. Oh, just buy.
I don't dog
DynoJet.
him as much anymore as
Yeah.
long as it's repeatable, right? If I get a dyno that's
Can I-
repeating before I start
Can
my
repeat?
adjustments,
Can
then
I
we're
hold
golden.
the engine where I want it to be? Can I steady?
A lot of them won't do that, man. That part, good luck.
That's actually
fucking-
talking about the cold. That's a problem I had today was the tires changing. Like I had to play with my steady state. My dyno will always.
Are
hold
you
whatever I
dyno
want.
dynamics like James?
Dyno, yeah.
So
Dyno.
I was just gonna say, so James' classes was cool as shit because that dyno would hold back, you know, the 600 or 700 horse, seemingly, you know, whatever we would put on it, it was holding back, and you could demonstrate how quickly you could whip through a map. And it's funny because all the cars we tuned like 4 cars in his dyno. Every one of them did not need any street tuning whatsoever. The owners took them out, drove them up and down the road for some of them an hour or two. And said, I really can't find anything it does weird. If I bought it brand new today, I would expect it to drive this way. All of them did that. Even like some old shit boxes and some really cool stuff that we tuned there.
Yeah, there's some videos. I guess that's my one complaint about. I don't say complaint, but one thing I wish Dyno Dynamics did that Mustang does is their vehicle simulation. I still do it on the Dyno Dynamics, but depending on what you want to do, I wind up doing it a couple times, but I don't think they did it in the video. That's one thing some guys gave me shit for is the way I like, especially on a road race car, and I think it's in the video we did on the LS swapped Tesla. It looks like we were just doing it to beat the shit out of the car and get flames out of it, which they did actually tell me to do it for that reason, but they saw it while I was just sitting there ripping through the gears to make sure the car drove okay and held it back at everything. But yeah, that's all I care about. Will it repeat and will we steady state?
I mean, at the end of the day, let's be honest about what it is. It's a tool. It's
Right.
not some sort of thing that provides some sort of amorphous thing that gives you, I don't know, magic results.
Yeah,
I'm
you want a number generator? Go to Google and type in and calculate what you want. Call it a day.
Exactly.
You can bench race all you want. So
Half the people that show up to get their stuff tuned or dynoed around here think that it really is a magic box that you put the car on there and the dyno does something and the car's tuned.
Yeah,
Like,
I just deal with that. Everybody thinks that.
Like,
Part of my
that is-
job is to explain to them the realities. Like, I'm going to find
it is
400
literally
things
a-
wrong with your car, and you're not
The
going to like
dyno
it.
is literally a torque wrench with a roller on it.
Right. I
basically
know.
it.
I'm just using this to spin everything to see if the thing pukes oil all over before you take it to a track and run into a wall. That's the best thing about the engine dyno. James, you still liking your engine dyno there?
Oh yeah, that's Man,
The couple years I worked at
controls.
Blueprint was fucking awesome. Every day in an engine dyno, what are we testing today? Oh, Jesus. It's like
Yeah, the
heroin.
control. I mean, you don't have tire slip, you don't have transmissions, you
For
don't
sure.
have, it's,
And you can see minute changes repeatably very easy on the engine, stuff that
Yeah.
doesn't translate through a torque converter.
yeah, I mean, you can repeat within 1 horsepower, pull to pull to pull.
Over and over and
constant,
over,
keep the
yeah.
fluids and stuff constant,
Yeah. And you can actually map that losses and gains to the fluid temps and things like that too. It's pretty cool. That's interesting. Now I wondered how that was going because it's funny. I worked for Blueprint, I guess, a couple of years and have done a number of visits out there for other reasons and love going to their dyno. And you know that job kicks ass. They start at 6:30 in the morning, I think, but we'd be there at 6, sometimes 5:30. There'd be people there at 5 a.m. starting work. And I mean, for me, it was fun. Other people, it's a factory job, whatever, but I enjoyed it. Getting there, I was like, I'm never going to come to work at 6 or 6:30 in the morning. Fuck, I was there early every morning making rips on the dyno, doing stuff, whatever they had queued up. And it was cool because they had an R&D department, so they'd have stuff queued up for testing. So when I'm done with one, I'd go to another dyno and work on the test, and someone else would be swapping out the engine in the cart for the next test or next round of tests. So that's fun. I hope that is enjoyable for you.
Yeah, it's been really eye-opening just for the simple fact, test you can rapidly test things. That's the best way to put it because, normally like on a chassis dyno, you got to wait for somebody to come in with a particular setup to test certain things on. And, this way, I mean, like today, for instance, we tested 4 different camshafts in an LT1 today. I mean, you can't do that on a chassis dyno.
Hell, some cars just strapping 2 cars a day is a fucking nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
Ran into that today. BMWs. I hate strapping BMWs. I swear to God, an engineer at BMW just looks at it and is like, how can I make this a bitch to strap on a chassis dyno?
Man, C7's been like that for me because they went to the freaking round lower control arms because like the C5s and C6s, they've got that little channel. You can literally just stick the hook in it and pull straight down on those little brackets on the dyno dynamics. And you can hook the thing up in 5 minutes. But
do you have those brackets, James?
Yeah.
I might need some measurements from you. Mine disappeared when I moved. The guys that have my dyno swear they never had them. And I'm like,
Dude,
all right, well,
those things are high too for what they are.
$1,000, yeah.
Yeah.
I was just gonna, so I was starting to draw one, but I might hit you up for some just basic point-to-point measurements so I get them in a spot that I know works because I'm just gonna laser cut and make my own set.
Yeah, there ain't much to them.
Yeah.
That's what I would.
But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's one thing. I don't care how long you've been tuning. I know guys that have, I've been tuning forever, and then I just never get the car straps because that's one thing some guys complain about the dyno dynamics. So the Hellcat we put on last week, 900 horsepower, no problems at all as long as you pull straight down on it. We spun the first time. I adjusted the strap bar, lifted the strap bar. We did 7 hits back to back, repeatable every single time.
Yeah, I literally just did a red eye a couple weeks ago, and man, I don't know what it is about those. I guess where they're so freaking heavy, they don't really need a whole lot of strapping, I guess. But they just hook.
Yeah, I was surprised. And then we just keep belt dressing around as our dyno spray. It makes less
Dyno
less
sauce.
DHT. Yeah, it works well.
I haven't had
I
the-
used to use headliner glue. Worked really well for us.
I've done like spray glue before, but it sometimes it gets stuck on stuff and then it's a bitch to clean off.
Makes a mess.
Yeah,
That stuff makes a mess.
the belt dressing cleans off pretty well with just basic detailer.
What else? Keep us going. It's been an hour.
I
I got stuff to do.
I don't know.
Pro Stock John asks, hey, what are the differences you see between the BTR Trinity equalizer versus ProFlow and HiRam? That
Yeah,
was
James
specific-
Short. He's asking that of James.
Yes, he is specifically asking James.
The Roush Dyno building is amazing, by the way.
The
Sorry.
ProFlow, we haven't actually tested it because the only thing that we have directly comparable to a ProFlow would be the LS3 version. And of course, we don't have a LS3 ProFlow. I don't even know if we have a ProFlow in the building, to be honest. But anyway, we briefly tested, the high ram stuff and the Trinity on the LT1. The LS3 testing for all those different intakes, that was all done before I got there. So I don't really know what the ins and outs are on those in particular. But I will say on the LT1, the Trinity is actually slightly better. The power bands are very, very similar, despite the Trinity being a little bit shorter runner.
Better distribution out of the Trinity, don't you? Isn't that one of the reasons?
Yeah,
Across
the
the board,
Trinity
yeah.
actually, that was the whole point of the equalizer. That was what its name came from. Was they really spent a whole lot of time trying to balance the cylinders out, within the plenum and runner design and all that one. And it is better than the stock LS3 intake, but it's kind of funny that the Trinity actually had better distribution than even the equalizer did. So obviously Camshafts kind of changed that around, moved that around a little bit here and there.
Sure.
But really, I think the radius entry on the high ram really kills a lot of the runner length that it actually has. So, but yeah, I mean, high ram versus Trinity on the LT, it's almost negligible, really. So.
I give you your answer, John. I like Pro Stock John. He always asks pretty good questions. So he explains that container shipping is up big time. One of the local Chicago drag race guys, Tom Urbick, who I know, works on those boats. Ooh, we'd like to talk to Tom. I like big boats. Shipping stuff is interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure 100% what it is. Like whether it's fuel costs are part of it. I'm wondering how much is just shipping delays. Like what are requirements now to meet COVID protocol if someone on the boat has COVID or you're coming into port and you have to quarantine in or out of port. Customs everywhere is backed up, partly because of COVID protocols, partly just because everyone's backed up. I never would have expected to be the jump it did, but I'd be curious if anyone has any insight as to why. I could see 10, 20, maybe even 30%, but it was what, 3,000% almost?
Right. What the fuck? I mean, what about inflation killing the value of the dollar? Come on, everything that's going up, a good chunk of it is because the value of the dollar has gone down.
Yeah, I mean, have you seen where like the value of like used vehicles and stuff have gone up so much that states are going to be raising property taxes on the vehicle you already own?
Ad valorem taxes, great things there.
Yeah, maybe I said like vehicles are so ridiculous.
I suspect some irony in that tone.
We're getting on this horrible topic again. Doom and gloom of the government
regulations. Here's one. So goofy or oddball input or outputs you've seen on a car that you wouldn't have thought of or just found cool.
Oh, I got some. Give them your best though. Kenny might have some weird shit.
No, all my shit's pretty boring. No, I can't.
And I did this one something like 12 years ago. A pulse oximeter that also it did a heart rate and your oxygen content. I've actually logged that.
Is that so you can gauge the response from your passengers?
No, that was so that you could make sure that your driver at Bonneville isn't asphyxiating because you had negative pressure in the cabin at 300 miles an hour.
Ooh.
I saw one at CRI that kind of had me puzzled a little bit. It was a pressure transducer in one of the end links of anti-roll bar. It was almost like
pressure transducer.
Are you sure it wasn't a strain gauge?
No, it wasn't. It was definitely a pressure transducer. It would technically act like a strain gauge, but it looked like a hydraulic cylinder that basically had a pressure transducer in it.
Yeah, that was in the Ham or BHAM booth. He had that on that carbon fiber anti-roll bar. It's probably to actually measure the twist force on that bar, I bet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I could see that. I guess we need to talk to that guy because I guess Travis Ball knows him. BMF guy knows him. I'm going to ask Travis because he's my neighbor now, or close enough. I do work for his shop.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just something they're trying to get some data acquisition where it's a new anti-roll bar on the market, just to kind of see what kind of loads that it takes. And if it does break, they'll have a metric of, you know, how much load that it actually took to actually break it or something. I don't know.
So I know the NASCAR guys, Eric Yost gets the used strain gauges and the H bridge or whatever those bridge or whatever they're called, where it'll measure just slight twist in metal and things like that. And if you know what you're doing, you can use those. He gets those off of cup cars, and you can use them for whatever he wants. Like you use them for strain gauges for shifters to do bump shifting. He done some neat shit. I'm making his homemade stuff with those.
Yeah, there's man, I was just trying to find them now. They weren't terribly expensive. We used a bunch in college. I don't remember. I didn't really pay attention to what they cost because I would just go get them and glue them to all the things on our race car because it was part of science. I was allowed to, and I didn't have to pay for them, so I didn't think about it.
Joys of an unlimited budget.
Yeah, it really sucked when I had to go build race cars on my own money again.
What's up,
People are
Scott
doing with
McDonald? Sorry. Give little shout outs. Very cool. All right. Anybody else? We wake up Jason, tell him, hey, get ready to take us out.
Let's see.
The joys of working remotely. It's pretty awesome. It's hilarious.
Yeah, been doing it for 2 years now almost.
Yeah, right. Like 100% from home. Do you have to ever go into the office?
On
I
Alibaba.
don't have an office anymore.
Don't even have an office anymore. Wow.
Yeah, my wife has been to the office building for the company she started back in February twice.
Okay.
And 3 times. The last time she went in for half a day, I was like, this is dumb. Half the people I work with aren't even in this country, so there's no point for me to come here. I get less work done.
A lot of places are just getting rid of their offices altogether.
I'm a little tired of office at home. I'm a little bit less traveling. I'm trying to get out as much as I can. So I've been working with some local shops down in Northwest Arkansas here. So I try to get out at least one day a week. But God, the home office is getting old a little bit. Like when the dog or the wife comes in, and it's cool. I love them all to death. But I'll be on a call where I'm like pissed off because somebody's fucking crank reluctor wheels bent, and I'm telling this guy he's got to take his whole new build apart. Had one of those today. It's like, and she comes in with a lunch, and it's super nice, but I'm like, just not in the mood for people interrupting.
You need some a little bit of space sometimes, but.
I've got it. I'm on the other complete side of the house, but sometimes the people in the house don't realize that you got to stay away.
Or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a Saturday watching cartoons thing. I'm working, even though I'm tapping away at Facebook, pissing people off. But
yeah, I was gonna say I'll go down and check my email at night. Somebody from work will shoot me a message. I'm like, no, dude, go away. What the fuck?
Right. I got certain hours I'll answer that. People who are bitching about stop messaging me at 11 o'clock at night. I'm like, that's dumb. Let them message you. Turn off your fucking phone and answer them when you're ready to answer them the next morning. If someone bings you, doesn't mean you got to reply right away. Just queue them up and go through them and address them in the morning. God, Lord. Anyway, somebody was bitching about that today. It's like the guys in the motorcycles and the grass clippings.
Oh, that one. I set it out of office. For Monday and Tuesday because I had use it or lose it days. And
yeah,
I swear somebody hit me up Monday morning, like tagged me directly, so it made a bunch of noise, and was asking the status of some whatever bullshit. And I mean, I didn't reply. I just looked at it and I'm like, come on, dude. There's clearly a bubble right next to my name, right above where you tagged me. It says, I'm not fucking here.
I'm out.
Wednesday.
I wish you could do that with Facebook Messenger. All right, just as a wrap up, we're taking us out, but I'm going to talk to the PRI guy, and we're going to make some of our suggestions, and they may be dumb, and see if he can get that in front of some people or not, or if he thinks that's viable. And if not, we're going to come back with a recommendation. Do you think the RPM Act is going to really help anything, or are we all just fucked and we just need to buy into it? So that's about it. But everybody else have a good week, and we'll see you whenever we do this again next. I'll try to get some guests on here. Everybody have a good year. Talk to you soon.